Hey, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling. Thank you for tuning in for this episode. This one is a review episode, and it's the return of one of my all-time favorite rock and roll singers, Steve Perry. I mean, the name kind of speaks for itself. His nickname is The Voice. He's the reason that Journey's Greatest Hits continues to sell something like 500,000 copies every year. I'm not kidding, I did read that. And Steve just released only his third solo album, and the first newly recorded music from him in about over 20 years. Yeah, his new album is called Traces, and it kind of came out of nowhere in late summer of this year. All of a sudden, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, someone who'd been, behind the scenes, missing in action, hadn't heard much from Steve Perry. All of a sudden, here he was talking about a brand new album, and so I'm happy to talk about it. Let's get the important thing out of the way first: the artwork. So this album came out on Fantasy Records, which is and really a legendary label. I mean, Creedence Clearwater Revival were on Fantasy Records. Vince Guaraldi, like a jazz guy. Not exactly a rock label, but it's a vintage label. So, some people online say, he's not even on a major label anymore. Yeah, believe me, he's still on a major label. This album, by the way, debuted at Billboard at number 6. Now, that doesn't mean as much as it used to, but it still looks pretty cool to see a classic artist like that way up in the top 10 in Billboard. Let's talk about this record. Just one of the reasons. Much like I collect, I really like Journey's artwork on vinyl. Well, this one doesn't disappoint. This album cover is rich with imagery. You wouldn't see it all on the CD. There's a lot to take in here, and the more I look at it, the more I see. It's almost like Where's Waldo? So let's take a look up here. Is that, kind of a... It's almost a very Journey-ish logo. If you think of the Infinity album cover, that might not even be right, but I know there's a few things on here that are a little more direct. Check that out. Infinity, maybe. That's a Stratocaster. I don't know if that refers to Neil Schon. Really not sure about that. There's the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. That's where they're from. City by the Bay and all of that. Like I said, the more you look at it, the more you see in it. I mean, there's a microphone that's sort of on fire. Really cool stuff in here. On the back, there's even more imagery. There's an old beat-up drum set, and I think what that might refer to is the fact that Steve started out, believe it or not, as a drummer. One of the most famous rock vocalists did not start out just as a lead singer. He started out as a drummer, which might explain why he's always had a great rhythmic feel to a lot of what he does. In the background here, there's a highway sign that says Hanford. That's Hanford, California. That's where he was born. So anyway, that's the artwork, and it's not the most important thing. I'm only kidding. Now, the first taste most of us heard of this album was the first single, called No Erasing. And I kind of thought at the time that that's probably the liveliest thing that's going to be on that album. And I was right. There's a difference between Steve Perry's solo work and Journey's albums. In my opinion, the difference is Neil Schon, a guitar player that, strong-willed, band founder, wants to rock. So you have to keep that in mind. This is very much a mood album. This is not a rocker of an album, okay? Let's, can I just address something else here? You may notice this is not open. It's not going to be open. I don't open my vinyl. There may come a day when I do. Right now I have a crappy turntable that doesn't sound good. I'm better off listening to the CDs, so I'm not opening this. So I know I'm missing some of the stuff behind here, but we're going to switch over and take a look at the CD. I bought the deluxe CD directly from his website, and let's get to what came with it. The important stuff. Came with a patch. Now I like the logo he's using. It's different than anything he's used before, and a sticker. I'll just keep those inside the CD. So here's the same artwork, and that cover. Like I said, you can see it a lot easier on the vinyl. This is an extremely personal album for Steve. Throughout his career, in his life, he's been highly devoted to the women in his life. I mean, oh Sherry, there was a Sherry. That was a real person. And when they broke up, all of a sudden you started seeing songs like I'll Be All Right Without You and things like that. His mother passing away, like it would be for anybody, was devastating. That put him out of commission. He took a 10-year hiatus from Journey, as you know, from 86 to 96, and then Trial by Fire came out. So Trial by Fire comes out in 1996. There's no tour to support it. He leaves the band, and then he records one song for, it's escaping me now, I believe it's a Disney movie, so one song. So it's the first full-length album that he's been involved in since 1996. So inside the CD, that's a picture of Steve. That's what the man himself looks like these days. And this CD is the deluxe version. There's 10 songs on the record and 10 songs on the regular edition of the CD. I figure you pay a little bit extra for the deluxe and you get another half album compared to that. So lyrics to all the songs are here. He's got some big time major musicianship going on this album. The drums are by Vinny, I always get his name on Colueda. That's not even how to say. He's played with Sting. He's a famous session drummer. Nathan East on bass. He's a famous session guy. Randy Goodrum on piano, well-known session guy, well-known songwriter. Steve even plays bass on some of the songs because he tends to write songs on bass, which I've always found interesting. Tom Flowers is not a name I recognize, but he's figures heavily in the production of this album. Pino Palladino, famous bass player, appears in some of these songs here. This is some of the artwork that's inside the album. Now, there's not a lot on here that I would call extremely lively. No Erasing is far and away the most upbeat thing you're going to hear on this album. And if you haven't heard it yet, I can't imagine if you're a fan at all you haven't heard it, but it reminds me of a song off his first solo album, Street Talk, called Captured by the Moment, which is, you know, he's only done 3 solo albums now. I'm a much bigger fan of his work with Journey, because quite frankly, it rocks a little bit more with Journey. I know a lot of people think of them as a pop band, but listen to Steve's solo stuff, there's a difference. This is an extremely personal album for him. He lost a lady that he was with. She died of cancer. He lost her, and some of the songs on here are extremely personal, almost as if he's talking directly to her. Very vulnerable. It's a side of him we don't see. He's a private guy. You don't really know much about him. So No Erasing is probably is my favorite song here. There's another up-tempo song on here that you could almost call a rocker, co-written with guitarist John Five. A lot of you out there probably know who he is. It's called Sunshine's Gray. It's a good one. There's a bluesy song on here called No More Crying. Kind of reminds me of something he might have done with Journey, something like something from Departure, like not really Good Morning Girl, but you know, something that it's in the Journey vein. There's nothing really on here that reminds me of Journey per se. There's a song, one of the bonus tracks is called Could We Be Something Again. That's probably my favorite of the bonus tracks. It's a lot of R&B in this. He loves his R&B. There's a song called Angel Eyes. It could be like a lost Motown song. This is very much a mood album. You don't throw this album on at a party. This is an album to put on and, you know, when you're in a contemplative kind of mood. And I'll be honest with you. I'll be completely honest with you. Anybody that's ever watched any amount of these shows knows I'm a huge Journey fan. So when one of my favorite artist comes out with something, I really try to listen to it with an objective ear. But it is really hard for me to be objective about this, because if I were to list my 2 favorite rock singers, they'd probably be Sammy Hagar and Steve Perry. Like, to me, they're just 2 guys that can get in front of a microphone and something cool happens, regardless. Now, Sammy's never been too far out of the public eye. He's never been too far between releasing at least one new song, you know, like he did with Chickenfoot, and new music coming out. He's been out and around. Steve's been such a recluse that it's just good to hear that voice again on new material. It's just good to have him back, you know, and who knows how long it'll last. There may not, you know, there's no, as of right now, I don't think there's any touring involved with this, but it is good to have him back. The voice is a lot, it's got a deeper range. I mean, the guy's pushing 70, and we haven't heard, you know, him recorded in many, many years. It's him. It's unmistakably him. He's not singing baritone. You know, he doesn't have the high falsetto like he did in the Escape and Frontiers days, but it's crazy to think that he would. But like I said, I wish there were a few more up-tempo rock songs on here, but that's not a complaint. He's back, and if you're a fan of his voice, you'll find something to appreciate about Traces. If you're not a fan, you won't like it. I don't really know how much plainer to put it, but the voice is back with a new album, and if you're a fan of him or a fan of Journey, I would recommend checking it out. That's my review. Thanks for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions.